We call it, we Inanas call it pedophile law because, it legalizes child marriage, and they wanted to legalize it from 9 years on. 9-year-old girls could marry legally. So there was a big rebellion against this law.
So, hallo und herzlich willkommen. Hi and hello everyone. My name is Anahita Neghabat. I'm a social anthropologist who lives here in Vienna, and I have the great pleasure and honor to be moderating this discussion today on women's rights under pressure internationally. And before we get into the topic, let me briefly introduce the speakers to you that we have with us here today. So right to my left, we have Aliyeh Ataei, who is an award-winning Iranian author and women's rights activist of Afghan descent. She's considered one of the most important literary voices of Iran. She was born in 1981 and grew up in the border region between Afghanistan and Iran. Her writing is very strongly autobiographical and has a focus on the fates of women in the region. And her book, which in German is titled Im Land der Vergessenen, won a very prestigious award, the Mehregane Adab Prize, as Best Book of the Year. And since 2023, you have been living in Paris. Yes. Next to you, we have Zainab Hassan. Hello. Zainab was born in 1998 in Baghdad, where she studied English philology, and you teach English at an international school in Baghdad. You have a lot of experience with workshops, leading workshops on creative writing and writing for children. Your recently published anthology won a very prestigious award. And in the book, Mit den Augen von Inanna, you wrote a text that addresses the issue of child marriage, which was recently legalized in Iraq. Thank you. And then we have Birgit Svensson. Hello. You were born in 1956 in Freiburg-Breisgau. You're a co-founder of the Inanna Network in Iraq, which we will hear more about shortly. You're the editor of 2 anthologies titled Through the Eyes of Inanna. And the anthologies deal with the everyday lives of women in Iraq, and they are a contemporary document of the social and political conditions under which women in Iraq work and live. You're also a journalist and Nahost-Korrespondentin for our German-speaking media, so people might know your name if they read German-speaking news. And you have been living in Baghdad for 15 years now. Thanks for being with us today. So, Zainab, my first question is to you. Can you tell us a bit about how women's rights and everyday freedoms have changed in Iraq over the past 2 decades?
Hey, first of all, I want to say hi for everybody here. I'm very happy to be here today with you. About your question, what I have experienced according to my age and life differ greatly from what I heard from mother, aunts, and their generation. For example, in 1970s, 18s, and 19s, women enjoyed greater freedom in terms of clothes, choosing their studies, and practicing hobbies and interests, with only slight consideration for general social, traditional, and customs. However, after 2003, major political change occurred. The emergence of unknown militia began to fight women's presence in public, whether by restricting their appearance, discouraging them from continuing their education beyond media or high school, or by making them avoid public place for fear of harassment, violence, or humiliation. Eventually, it's become an unofficial rule. For women to wear the abaya and hijab and avoid speaking about anything other than family, marriage, and children. In recent years, things have become somewhat less dangerous and less restrictive, though the women must still be continuous not to be draw social criticism or online deformation if they experience themselves too fairly in public or in social media. Now we have again a little more freedom than before. We can write, speak, participate, raise, and organize activities, but it is not completely freedom. It remains limited by prevailing religious and the social traditions. Some political change have allowed women to participate in politics, even if only those in quota system.
Thank you very much for giving this overview over different time periods. My next question connects to it and would be to you, Birgit. Could you tell us about the work that you do in Iraq, specifically the Inanna Network, how it was founded, why it was founded, maybe also the connection between the two of you that you have through the network, but also, since Zainab just outlined for us how it has historically changed in the last few years, how have the conditions of the work that you are doing also changed in the last years since you founded the network, and maybe especially also in the last 2 years?
Okay, yeah, it's working. So I think I have to go back to make it more clear for the viewers. I mean, remember, we had in Iraq 3 wars. The first one was in 1980 until 88. The second one was in 91. Then we had the next one, 2003. Then we had Al-Qaeda and the terror. Then we had ISIS or Daesh and the terror. So we only had war, terror. And the people were suffering alike, men and women. But the women, they faced more violence than men. Okay, in the war they faced the same, but at home the women faced violence as well. So it was a double pressure. And facing this, we thought in 2013 we have to do something. And we wanted to give the women a tool to work out their traumas, okay? And I'm a journalist, and I know how fantastic it is to be able to write everything out of your head. Because while you're writing, you are working on it. You are developing it. You are, so you are distancing yourself to it as well with the writing. So we started to collect some texts of female writers in Iraq. We made workshops, creative writing workshops, to teach the women how to write, how to express their feelings, etc. And so the first anthology started. And I tell you one thing. The German embassy in Baghdad said, okay, we want to make a pilot project. So we financed the first printing, the first book. And I went to the Writers' Union in Baghdad, 2013, I told you already. And then I told them, give me some texts. We want to make an anthology, a collection. And then they gave me texts. And the Goethe Institute, they were editing them. And then we got the first print, and I thought, something wrong here. And I said to my friends, look at this. And they only gave us men texts, not a single woman. And then I called the German ambassador and I said, they only gave us men. And then he said, okay, you know what we do? This is a pilot project anyway. What we do is, the second one we do is only women. And it's like this Inanna started. And then, of course, we wanted to find a name for our idea, for the anthology, and we were searching, and we found Inanna. She was one of the biggest and most powerful women in Uruk 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago. And she was a figure which fit us a lot. She was struggling, she was fighting a lot, and she was very contradictory. She was a goddess of war, but fertility as well. So it's a real contradiction in herself. And this is how we felt our texts, that they are contradictory. It's according to what every one of us has experienced. So this is how we found Inanna as a name for our. And then the first Arabic version came out 2013. And then I tell you another story. This is interesting to know, I think, in the whole context. We went down to Basra. This is the city in the very south of Iraq, next to Iran, by the way, not very far. The second biggest city now in Iraq. And we went from Baghdad to Basra, and we had a presentation of Inanna book, a women's book. And we came to Basra, and there was the culture house, and the culture house was full of people. It was really popped, and the people were even standing aside. About 100, 110, but only men. Only 5 women. And I welcomed everybody, and I said to them, don't you have any women in this city? What's the matter? What happened? And then I took 2 of the 5 women and put them on the podium with us. And one of them, she had the courage to tell us what's happening. They didn't dare to stand up and read their texts. Some of them even wrote under a male pseudonym, under a male name. And they said that the men in the Writers' Union, for example, they don't tell them about this event. And it's a women's book. So this was Basra 2013. Now it has changed completely. Now when we have an event in Basra, it's like 50-50 or something like that. But at that time, it was really hard. But in the meantime, I think with Inanna, with the way of expressing themselves, they became more independent, they became more self-confident, and they stand up now and they write, and this is or read, and this is how I come to know Zainab, because she was in one of our workshops, and started to learn how to write, and started to learn how to express herself. This is how we work.
I will ask you later how it has changed in the last 1 and 2 years. We'll come to that. First, Aliyeh, let me come to you. Tomorrow we're going to have another discussion, the 2 of us, at Hauptbücherei, where we're going to talk about your book more deeply, Im Land der Vergessenen. But still, already now, I would I would kindly ask you to tell us a bit about the book. It's mainly autobiographical writing. You write a lot of stories of people. You tell their stories. And many of these stories also have a special lens that focuses on how by the violence that is there, how are women affected even more or even differently? You grew up in the border region, Iran and Afghanistan, and I was also really interested in how looking from the border changes your perspective. Yeah. So could you tell us a bit, could you first provide us a bit of context about the situation of women's rights in Iran and Afghanistan? But then also tell us about your book and the role that your writing has in telling these stories.
Hello everyone, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. My book is not autobiography. I think it's autofictional, because influence of my life in this book and at the first part of the book is story of my dad. He endured in the war between Iran and Iraq, and then for 28 years he got illness, deserve, and after the 28 years he died. And then I started writing this book. But I'm Iranian. I'm from the border of the Iran and Afghanistan, and part of my family in Afghanistan and part of them in Iran. And I know the two situations of the people at the two sides of the border. And when I want to talk violence, maybe that's a kidding, you know, because you understand it's not a bordering same to European border. It's a very geopolitical border, and everything is a. It's not a funny story. When I talk about the one smuggler in my book, and everything is really difficult. I don't know how I explain it. But in this book, I focused on the topic about the woman, not physically in the war, but the influence of the war, the body influence of the war. The name of this book in English is Body of War. It's a body of the woman. And I start with my hand because my father, after the war, he get epilepsy, and when he get attacked, I put my hand in in his mouth and injured my hand. And I start this injury to kill the woman, to all of the things to happen for the woman from the Afghanistan or Iran, and they walking between the two border. I'm so sorry for this book, because this is not a happy book. This is if I want to be honest with the people, I really want to write a love story. And it's not possible for me, because when I start writing, everything is come on in my hand, and it's not possible to write a happy story, but I talk about more and more about this book. And but it's not a shame for me, it's a shame for world, for the make this a story, for the make this a story for the woman, for the make this a story for the Middle East, for they didn't want to stop the war. And we talk about more and more about the war, and I believe the political people, or maybe as a government, they don't have a time to read the story, because they are in the most important job. They are continue to kill the people, and they don't have a time to reading. And I don't know why we talk more and more about between the usual people. We talk about the literature. And I'm really sorry. I'm so angry about because I think when I was child, my dream is about the end of the war. All of the time I think what the war is stop. You know, and this time I'm 44 years old, but the war is not a stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for tying it to the present and saying the war has not stopped. It's a story that's continuing. How can we write? How can we talk about literature? How can I think to write a happy story, a love story, when this is a continuous story that's not ending? And also not ending when you're in the diaspora. It's not ending. Zainab, when we talked, you told me that you would like to tell us also more about the role of Inanna, and how Inanna is a helpful lens to look at the struggles that women are facing. I feel a certain kinship to Inanna because my name is Anahita, and Anahita they are sisters basically. It's not the same mythological background, but Anahita is also a goddess of fertility and war. And water, so I feel very close to Inanna. But could you tell us more about Inanna and the role that Inanna as a lens and as a metaphor has in your writing and in your work also?
Inanna, the symbol of a figure of love and courage, reminds us to look back to our roots and origins, where women in history represented stunning examples of beauty, bravery, leadership, and power, without ever abounding their femininity and capacity to love. Personally, I am proud to belong to Inanna legacy. I hope to be this accused granddaughter who pulled open what she started to prove that women are complete human beings possessing full strength that qualifies them to live freely, bravely, and steadfastly. Many thanks to my friend Birgit, who give us this great opportunity to be part of the writers of Inanna project, and thank you for listening to me today. So you may believe in our ideas and the bounty of our young generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Coming back to you, Birgit, I was teasing it in the beginning. When we had a conversation on the phone prior to this event, you told me that the conditions of the work that you do have especially changed in the last 1 or 2 years. Could you tell us more about that? What has changed politically? What are the difficulties and the new struggles also that are coming up or resurfacing?
I think the development for women in Iraq, as I see it from the observer perspective, has gone in waves. So after 2003, when the American and British invasion was in Iraq, we had the vacuum, the power vacuum, which occurred was closed by the religious hardliners. So we had a lot of religious, let's say, terror. They would tell us how to dress. They would tell us women not to drive. They would kill women driving. This was between 2003 and, let's say, 2010. A cover like Inanna we have now was not possible for the first edition we made. It was not possible because she's naked. So all the illustrations or the pictures of her, what we found is that she was naked, and this was an absolute taboo for the religious hardliner at that time. I remember when we had the first invitation to the book fair in Frankfurt, we wanted to take Inanna with us, I mean somehow to demonstrate how she looked like, or how she was painted, or how she was illustrated. And we didn't find her in Baghdad, nothing. There was not a poster, there was nothing of her, not a sculpture, nothing. And the Ministry of Culture, you wouldn't believe it, they have all the antique busts and from Iraq in their foyer. But Inanna, they covered her and then they took her out, okay? So we didn't find her. But then when the American troops left in 2011, we had a breathe. We could breathe for some years until Daesh came in 2013. So we had the 2 years when it was quite free and the development was free, and we had a lot of hope for the women's situation and of the whole. And then it was, and then the independence grew of the women, and they were more self-confident. And when we made Inanna 2, we had a meeting of all the writers. We have 31 writers in Inanna 2 now. And we had a meeting, and they all voted for this cover. They said, we don't want to silence anymore. We want to show her how she is, how she was. And they all voted for this cover. But now, 2 years ago, we had the feeling that we were like in the peak of our goals. The women were very self-confident. They had good jobs. One of our Inannas is even the spokesperson of the president today. The other one, we have 10 journalists in the network. One has her own cultural program in the television, etc. So they all had good jobs, or they found good jobs, good training. But then, last year in summer, I got a telephone call of 2 or 3 of the Inanas saying that, can you imagine what happens now? There is a law on the table of the parliament and they want to legalize child marriage. They want to abolish the civil court, the civil laws for family positions, and they want to make it religious. I mean, and then there was a big fight. All the women were united in Iraq. We had demonstrations every weekend. I don't think it is known here that we had such a big fight against this law. We call it, we Inanas call it pedophile law because, I mean, it legalizes child marriage and they wanted to legalize it from 9 years on. 9-year-old girls could marry legally. So there was a big rebellion against this law. Okay, then they took the law from the age of child marriage from 9 to 15. But I mean, 15 still, a girl is a child with 15. And but the score of this law was a different one. The score of this law was to change civil law or civil courts into religious courts. And this is what we have now. The law has been voted for in February. Despite all the discussions, all the rebellions, everything we did against it, it was voted for in February, and it is now in power since September. Okay, so the law now says that a woman loses all the financial support when she's divorced. She has to leave her children to the ex-husband when they are 8 years old, and. So it's really restricting the positions of the women 100%. And this law is like the law in Iran, because Iran has this law for a long time, and they just took it from Iran and impose it onto us in Iraq. This is the situation now. And the thing is that the women's organizations, they cannot work anymore in Iraq. They prevent them from working. We are quite free still because we work on literature. But if we take up women's issues, we are threatened as well. So it's a really tough situation at the moment, and I don't know where it goes.
So the future of the network is also somehow unclear at the moment. Yeah. Ali, it was just mentioned. As I was listening to you, I was in my head. I was saying, yeah, like in Iran, and then you said it. Could you tell us? I have 2 questions in one. So first of all, when I was reading your book, the preface was written in 2022, and at the time it says that you were in Tehran and the protests were going on, the Women Life Freedom protests. So while we hear that there are these horrible continuities, but then also horrible new developments, at the same time there's also a continuity of resistance that's also having these waves of up and down, and at the time there was a lot of hope also. Could you tell us about how you experienced the last few years in terms of also the protests, but then also hearing about the situation in Iraq, for example, how does it resonate as someone who knows how the situation is in Iran and Afghanistan? What are the differences? What are the similarities? What are the shared struggles?
All of the people see the social media. Social media is this time is show the country. I think the people decided about the social media. But I want to talk about the history of the women of Iran. When at the first time, I talk about the literature. 10th century ago, Rabe Balkhi. This time is Balkh is from the Iran. This time is from Afghanistan. She write a protest, and her family killed her because she write. And this situation is continue. It's not about exactly about the hijab. Maybe that's the hijab is this time is a better time for a hijab, but they censor you, and this is very important, I think, for me. And when I was, to be honest, about the situation of the woman, I think when you are Iranian and you wake up in Iran and you open your eyes at all of the country, your fighting is a start, you know. But we have a very Asian woman, I think, in the inside of all of us, and we trying to everything for so many years. And if I stay here, I have too much women in my background. They protect me, try writing, try learning, try I'm here. And I think this way is continue. Maybe the people think, okay, this is a stop, and the woman this time is very okay. This time the hijab is not a very same to the last year. Some girls in Tehran, they don't have a hijab and they're walking in the street, and the people think, okay, this is enough. But it's not enough, because we are alive and we continue. And the last question.
Similarities and differences. What resonates when you hear about Iraq, for example? Yeah.
Afghanistan is a different situation. Really, it's a different situation from the Iran. And this time the Taliban told the woman to forbidden the woman to writing. They told all of the books from the woman writings, they put in they destroyed the books in the bookstore from the woman. And the woman writings are forbidden, all of them in Afghanistan. And my books, same to my books, is a PDF in Afghanistan. They stopped to publish the book. My publisher is in Iran, but they stopped to separate the book in the bookstore. You know, it's really when I don't think that the situation of the Afghanistan this time is a bad situation in the world for women, really, because they stopped the education. And when they stopped the education, they stopped another generation to grow up, because the woman is a mother, the future mother, you know, and they want to delete the woman in the country, you know, because this time they say if you have a child and she's a girl, maybe if you want, get an identity card, or if you want to, it's not important, you know, because they want to. We know how much girl was born in Afghanistan. And I think the situation of the Taliban this time is really clear for the world. And this is a shameful way for US to lift Afghanistan, for deal with the Taliban, for the women, you know. This is, I don't know why they do it, but we expect it. We expect it. Because when U.S. attacked to Afghanistan, they told us it's about we want to destroy the terrorism, you know. But the terrorism is not in Afghanistan. The terrorism in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, because the Al-Qaeda is not about Afghanistan. But they destroyed Afghanistan, and after the 20 years, they left Afghanistan. And this time is a situation for the woman. But they say, we protect the woman. How you protect the woman is not important to protect 1 million women in Afghanistan. Maybe they say the refugee card to 1 million women Afghan women in the world. But it's not possible to protect the 20 million women in Afghanistan. This time they don't go to a school, the education stop, the medical is stop, and everything is stopping the woman from Afghanistan. And it's not about the voice. I'm not a voice of the woman in Afghanistan. Really, maybe I write a story, but it's not a voice. I think all of the people in the world, they want to see the suffer. And when they see the suffer, they think, okay, we are so shameful for this. But nobody do anything for this. You know, this is when I talk, I read this one sentence. I hope I translate well. from the Aliyeh Ataei. He is an Afghan writer. He writes, "We died," and the photographer of the New York Times get a prize. You know, it's very important. It's very important when you talk about Afghanistan. It's not a vitrine from the world to see the suffer, how the colored woman died. So maybe that's a film, you know? It's not a film, and it really does happen. And if you want to be the Afghan man in Afghanistan, they told you, no, education is enough for the woman. Really, if you want because I understand, all of them is very close, not all of them, but most of them is closer to Taliban in the ideology and the idea. And when you talk, the woman in Afghanistan is alone. They don't have a man, same to Iranian women, you know? The Iranian men protect the Iranian woman. But they are different from the Afghanistan. And they are alone. And when we talk about it, and we want about it, and want freedom, at the first time, the freedom that's happened inside. It's you are not give the freedom to women in Afghanistan. I understand it. But it is very important to give them a view of the freedom, a reality view of the freedom, you know? And when all of the time the people protect the U.S., I shocked about it. I did never know people talk about how they're happening in Afghanistan, and why they do it, why they go there to save them and left them. We don't understand it. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. You said it all, and also you were questioning. You're questioning why and how and to whom we're speaking, because you're saying this is not a secret. This is not something that needs to be said for the world to know. It's happening with the involvement of the world, and it's happening, and it's happening on all of our screens, and everyone knows, and it doesn't change. So who are we speaking to, and for what? Later, I will ask you why you're writing. But first, Zainab, let me ask you another question. I wanted to ask you, how do women in Iraq organize and support each other in everyday life beyond formal activism that we've already heard a bit about? And are there important generational or regional differences that you can tell us about? So what are the everyday realities of resistance?
Certainly, social phenomena differ from one place to another. But in Baghdad, the capital, there is still room for women to gather under various pretext to talk, share, agree on activities, and support one another. Through this, they gain strength, courage, and momentum toward new horizons. In the north, women are more liberated and enjoy greater space for movement and work, while in the south, tribal tradition and male dominates survival, making women's wishes and choose more limited and constrained. That's what's happening.
Was not ready. Thank you so much for also highlighting the regional differences. I wanted to ask you, Birgit. I had a new question that I had in mind, and it just slipped my mind. Yes, I also wanted to ask you about, because we were mentioning Women Life Freedom, which is originally a Kurdish slogan. This really draws our attention to the fact that we're speaking about a huge region, and we're speaking about it as if it was quite homogeneous. But could you give us more of an overview of maybe like national differences, but then also regional differences when it comes to the difference of situation for women in the cities, whereas more on the countryside, but then perhaps also ethnic groups, and what are big differences also between different nation states? Maybe a bit of an overview.
Well, Zainab said it already that it's a big difference in Iraq between Baghdad. I mean, we say Baghdad Hurriya, Baghdad freedom, okay? So a lot of women don't wear hijab in Baghdad. You can express yourself freely, etc. Whereas in the south, as she said already, it's more restricted. In the north, Mosul, the women lived under ISIS, under Daesh, okay? So this is a totally different story. And we have, in Inanna too, we have 3 writers from Mosul, and they explained to us or told us how they lived under Daesh. When they wanted to write, they couldn't write openly. They hide their paper under a table or up in the, in the roof or something. So they were not allowed to do that. For months sometimes they didn't leave their house. I mean, when you were talking about the Taliban in Afghanistan, I could hear our writers from Mosul telling us the situation under Daesh. So it was really nearly similar or the same. Yeah, but now Mosul has a sort of liberation. The women are very, very active there, and a lot of female candidates now for the elections. We had elections yesterday in Iraq. So this is another expression for them that they liberate themselves now. So this is the situation in Mosul. And then you have Kurdistan, of course. The Kurdish women, they had more or longer freedom. They didn't have the terror we had in the rest of Iraq, okay? So it all depends how the parts of Iraq developed within the last 20 years. And of course, the situation of the women developed accordingly. Yeah. What I discover, the women now, they look a lot to Lebanon, because Lebanon is very liberated for the women, much more than maybe any other Arab countries. And then they looked a lot towards you as well when there was the women's rebellion, and they were really crossing their fingers and saying, we hope that they succeed, because the women in Iraq in 2019 and 2020, they were very much together with the men at that time to make this Arabellion, we call it. I mean, the so-called revolution against the regime for regime change. So women and men were working together a lot, but then it was suffocated. I mean, they killed a lot of demonstrators, and it was the Shia militias killing them. And then came Corona, so the movement stopped. But then, as I told you already, when the Iranian women's uprising was, there was another hope that they will succeed. And now there is a lot of depression.
Thank you. Aliyeh, I wanted to come back to something that you started to lay out for us. There was a moment where you said, they claim they are protecting the women. And so historically, we have seen time and time again that this discourse of, we're protecting women's rights has been used to justify occupation and war, etc. So against this backdrop, how do you think about international solidarity? What can it mean? What can be the role of the rest of the world? And what should be the role? And what has it been?
Now, at the first, I want to be honest. I don't believe the peace. Because I think the peace is not happening in the literature. Because if the book stopped the war, we have too much big writers to write the big novels, and they don't stop any of the war. And when I write, at the first I don't think about the foreign readers. At the first I think I write for the women from the Iran and Afghanistan and Persian women, I don't think to translate, and maybe at the end that's a translate. But if I want to tell you, at the first they don't invite me because they invite me for talk about the peace. I really talk about the peace in the literature. I have invite for too many conferences for talking about the peace. I don't have a peace. If you read my book, you understand I am angry. I'm not in the peace. If I get a peace, maybe you kill me, you destroyed my home, you kill my children. The people don't search a piece in the literature from the woman in the Middle East, all of the Middle East. I think it's not a time for peace for us at the first. And when the people do it, I don't know. We are usual people, and we are readers, and we are writers. We are not decided about anything. And we're readers, and maybe it's true to respect all of the idea. I think is the first step to understand what happened, because all of the war in the Middle East, that's an ideological war. And for me, it's very important to respect together. Maybe it's happened. Maybe. I don't know. But because the violence this time is, for me, is the same to the people in the boss of the world decided to destroy the Middle East and make a new Middle East. You know, maybe we say we want to make a new Canada. You know, I don't understand what happened, but if I think about the Middle East, I think about this is a two value in the Middle East for the people. It's oil and a woman, and all of the time they fight about the oil and woman. They are the same in the idea in the world. And when they talk about the oil, same to they talk about the woman. And the woman is time, maybe is a poster and showing for the people. And not really understand the situation, because the situation, when we talk about the Middle East, I don't talk about the Iran or Afghanistan. I talk about Syria, Iraq, and Palestine, and all of the people in the world, all of the women in the Middle East. We are the same destiny. We have the same destiny at the end. I need to stop the war. But I don't know. And maybe you ask this question from the political people. I don't know. Thank you.
Aliyeh. Zainab? How do the legacies that we just heard about of war, of occupation and political instability shape women's lives in Iraq today?
Wars and occupation have left deep scars on women in particular. They resulted in an increase in widow, divorce, and orphans, leading to economic and social hardship that stripped many women of their rights and respect. The widow or divorced woman is often treated as a source of shame. Ranked socially below others, she may be blackmailed regarding her honor in exchange for money or survival. She is deemed equal abortions, facing social judgment and restriction. True liberation remains absent because society continues to view her through the lens of her marital status as a widow, divorced, or single mother. Women have also become scattered in their organization due to the multitude of political births, a group and organization whose loyalty and goals are often unclear. This lack of organization prevents proper quiet training and the achievement or justice or human development. Many of their rights to education and work have been lost as they are forced to focus on raising children after the father death, whether due to war, strain, violence, or other causes. Their desire to work in field they love has faded as life hardship have imposed parties that are heavier and more ungained than patient or inpatient?
Birgit, I want to also ask you a question about the role of international solidarity and what it could mean. Again, especially considering that the discourse surrounding women's rights in the Middle East or im Nahen Osten has so often been misused to justify war, occupation, violence. How do you see the role of international solidarity? What can it even mean against this complex backdrop?
Well, we had a time when the solidarity from the West was huge for women. Not only in Afghanistan when there were this 20 years of more or less occupation before the Western countries left. And by the way, it was not only the USA, it was a lot of other Western countries as well, among them Germany, okay? They were 20 years in Afghanistan and they just left like this. So I'm really accusing them a lot for what they did as well. So, but for Iraq and for other Arab countries, it was a little bit different. They were in the beginning, they were supporting women a lot. And in Iraq, for example, they have a quota now for women for the parliament. 25% of the parliament members or of all the legislative council must be women. Not only in the parliament itself in Baghdad, but on the provincial level and each level. So this was under the American occupation when the Iraqi constitution was redesigned and the quota was implemented. And the women say now, thanks God to the quota, otherwise we couldn't have, or we wouldn't have a representation at all. So I think, but for the rest of the Arab countries, the fighting for this kind of representation was not enough, both from the international community and from the people themselves. So they should have, in my opinion, worked together closer than they did. And now I discovered the following in the last 2-3 years. Western countries or the Western influence is rejected by the people in the Middle East. And more and more. So they are distancing themselves for the Western influence a lot. So not only from the US, but from the British, for example, the ancient colonists, etc. So we are in a transformation period, I think, when Western influence is rejected by the people, but they didn't find their own way until now. So all that comes from the Western countries, I hear this from the European embassies, for example, in the Middle East, that they don't have a say. They are not heard anymore. So the influence and the possibility to influence is restricted at the moment, and I think it's going to be more and more.
Thank you. I have to look at the time. Yeah, we have to close, unfortunately. I really want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us, sharing also your lived experiences, sharing the work that you do in writing and today also in speaking. And maybe I want to close with something you said in your last statement, Aliyeh, that I think this panel really showed that, as you said, the faith of the women in the Middle East is connected. And there are a lot of interconnected struggles, but also interconnected solidarities, interconnected ways of resisting. And even though it often looks as though all hope is lost, I'm not going to say that it's not my place to say that, but what we do see is that there are these connections, these exchanges, and that resistance is happening despite a lot of hopelessness, and that means we are moving, at least, and we're still alive. Yeah, thank you so much.